Hello again. Well, it's actually for me only been like 10 minutes, 5 minutes maybe. But welcome back to the show. So I want to get into the next part after the video I just made about what is astrology. So let's assume for now that you decided, all right, I get it. Astrology is something that could be interesting. You know, it's not like you have to believe in it, but at least it's a way to look at myth. You know, it's just a fascinating thing that a lot of people are into reading about. So let's dig in deeper. Okay, so I'm just gonna assume that. Thank you for listening to me. And I keep looking at this paper because it's really where I want to get to eventually. All of this is leading up to me explaining this little crazy drawing thing I did. Which you can not even really see all that much of. It looks like a bunch of gibberish. But I keep looking at it, even though it doesn't have any script on it, because for some reason it just helps me, just looking at this model helps me keep my thoughts together. So, what I wanted to say next, or discuss, is, let's assume that you don't know anything about astrology, except for all the stuff I just said in the last video, about why astrology is fascinating. Study. So then where would you start? Okay, so the way that I would go forward is to imagine, first of all, that you needed to go inside of yourself and create categories. I'm imagining like little dividing lines of a pie, or little different compartments, and categorize yourself into different aspects of your personality. You know, you always think it's interesting at the beginning of, if you look at the beginning of scientific thought, or like in like BC times, we start with like there's everything. And also if you look at the way that baby's consciousness is, we start with everything is connected. I have no idea where I end and where the next thing begins, you know? And so the first thing you have to do is to differentiate and to break down and to sort of compartmentalize. And eventually, you erase all those compartments and then you know the bigger thing again. But at this point, we're going to start with breaking it down. Break it down. So, how would you break yourself down? Maybe you could stop this video at this point and consider, maybe write some notes and really think about it. What are the different aspects of your personality, of everybody's personality that they have? One way to think about it maybe is like different kinds of emotions that you have. You know, like I get angry, I get afraid, I get gas. Wait, that's not an emotion. I don't know. I want to say I feel tired. That's not an emotion either. I'm just coming up with stuff that I feel sometimes. So that's interesting. So differentiating right there. Physical sensation feelings from emotional sensations. All right. So anyway, the point is, after you sit and think about, for you, what you would do, I'll tell you what astrology does. They basically take the planets in the sky and they assign them different gods, different characters, and they each embody a different facet of yourself. So, at this point, I guess I want to say that I'm still studying astrology. Sometimes I feel like I know a lot, but I might get it wrong. So I'm just sort of going with what seems to be right for me from my studies. This is what I have ascertained. So first of all, what are the planets? The Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto. Is that a planet? It's a body. The Moon isn't a planet, neither is the Sun. So there are bodies out there that are moving around. And so we can say, you can look all of this up online. It's probably going to be better than me saying it. But for example, the Sun is your external personality. It's the masculine, it's sort of your fieriness. That's a funny way to say it. But it's in some way your personality, the way that you generally are in the world. It's that facet of yourself. The Moon could be your unconscious things, the things that are happening in the background, you don't even realize it, or like maybe it's things that you remember, the kind of memories you hold on to, or the kind of dreams you have. These are all qualities that are pointing to the same thing. Mercury is a god of communication, I think in Greek stories. I think he has wings on his feet. And there's a lot about some sort of small sibling relationships, any ways that you imagine that you communicate with people. Let's see, it's Mercury. Venus is the goddess of love, and so she's relationships and everything that's harmonious and beautiful and artistic and all those things. Mars is a god of war. So imagine that part of yourself that feels like super passionate about everything and just wants to like take on the world, or like bring all that energy to a project you're working on because you can't be a warrior right now. Anyway, Mars, Venus, Mars, Jupiter. I talked about Jupiter a little bit in the last video, but I didn't tell you that Jupiter is expansion. Jupiter is all the luckiness. In some ways, I think of Lakshmi in Hindu stuff, even though she's a woman, she's not the god Jupiter. But there's still this connection to this golden, lucky, bounteous, youthful, jovial, everything is amazing Jupiter. You know, it's also related to philosophy, spirituality. Jupiter is the guru. In Hindu mythology, Jupiter, and it's also really interesting if you look at the physical qualities of the planets, I think, and Jupiter is the gas giant, it's the biggest one, and then look at all the colors of it. It's literally expansive. And then what comes after Jupiter is Saturn, and Saturn is all the qualities of sort of death. It's in some of the stories, in I think Greek stories, I think it's Kronos, who is Zeus's father. So Saturn is the idea of this old, responsible king man. He's like this stone, stoic father, and it's these qualities in yourself where you feel like that person, where you feel like you have to be responsible. And it's also, there's obstacles that come, because if you think about like, when, as opposed to being this kid, in a lot of ways Jupiter, there's like this youthful quality to this. The adult has to deal with crap. Yeah, well, somebody's got to pay the bills, somebody's got to pick up the dog shit, you know? So there's like these, this kind of like obstacle nature is related to Saturn. The places where you're learning how to be responsible and be adult-like and stuff like that. And then that's where it stops for Vedic astrology and the mythology. It's interesting. They don't go anywhere past that. And I'm not really sure exactly, like, mythologically speaking, why there would be a difference. But in Western astrology, so Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus is the next one. And so Uranus is like this, this revolutionary. And, you know, I don't even know as much about the outer ones, so I can't say as much. But I see a lot of Uranus as this forward thinking. It's related to Aquarius, who has this like innovative future sight. I'm thinking of a friend who's like, just sees this, like, I have quite a few friends actually, who just like can envision what the future is like. And if you watch like sci-fi movies, futuristic stuff, that's like seeing out there, it's compared to where we're at now, is very revolutionary. It's innovative. It's like out there, right? Uranus, Neptune. Neptune, the little picture for Neptune is the trident, and it's like the underwater god Neptune ruling the watery, and water is related to, again, the moon, which I said also has stuff about dreams. So there's this like dreamy, ethereal thing. Neptune is also with Pisces, so there's this quality of like shimmery. It could be illusions, it's your fantasies, it's that like really higher realm of like imagination and utopia, which is interesting to think about how that could be related in some ways to that Uranian vision of the future, but it's maybe not. I mean, watching a fantasy movie is not exactly the same as watching like a hard sci-fi movie that's got a lot of science in it, right? Neptune, and then Pluto, which apparently is not a planet, so we're not supposed to talk about him, but Pluto is like explosive change. In some stories, Pluto is the god of the underworld. And so, what's the story? I can't remember what her name is in the Greek mythology, and she goes down, she's captured because she's so beautiful, and goes down and lives in Hades, and was offered all the food to eat, but only ate 6 seeds, was it 6? From a pomegranate, and those are the 6 months that she has to spend in the underworld. And so there's this quality of the story where she goes down and has to be in that darkness. But I think that there's a transformation, at least that aspect comes through with astrology and people, that Pluto can have this epic, imagine like a crazy revolution, a bomb just went off, but afterwards things become better. Possibly, maybe. It's always like a chance variable in there. You get to choose what to do with it. I think those are the main ones. I mean, and then there's like asteroids and stuff like that. And but if you think about within your own personality, all these different traits, think about the places that you are where you feel like you have to be responsible. Is it at work? Is it with your significant other? Or is it with children? Or with animals? Or maybe you're shirking responsibility in one of those areas that you should be actually being responsible. How would you say you are in relationships, Venus and the way that you interact in this loving, do you seek harmony with people, with your coworkers, with your intimate life, with different, aspects, or are you against that? How do you relate, or how do you communicate? Mercury, how do you notice? Have you ever thought about the way that you speak? Like, say, even your actual voice, or the words that you say, or your presence, like the faces that you make, or your tone of voice, or how close you get into someone's face, or like all the different ways that you can look at just that facet of yourself, the way that you communicate, Or again, the moon is like these nagging things that go on in the background that you don't, well, for me they're nagging, but that you're not even consciously aware of. But when you get stressed out, you're like, suddenly I realize that this whole time I've been worrying about this thing in the background, or I've been whatever emotion. For me, I think it's probably worry, but what will happen is suddenly I'll become consciously aware of the fact that there's been this almost quiet little mouse voice. It's like, oh, I'm not really sure about this. Do I really want to do this? Well, what if it... And then I get stressed out, and bam, that voice comes out, and I'm like, oh, now I'm aware of that part of myself. I didn't even hear it before. Or again, the sun. How do other people see you? How do you see yourself? What character are you playing in the story of life, of your life, of the life of people around you? So that's sort of, in a nutshell, generally what the planets mean. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.